In order to understand why phenomenology is important for moral theology, we need first of all to think about the broader question of the relationship between theology and philosophy. This is a perennial question. There has always been an important relationship between theology and philosophy. The great theologians of the church, like Augustine and St. Thomas, had to do their theology, and they did their theology, in the light of what was going on in different schools of philosophy. So this question poses itself today, and we as moral theologians have to ask ourselves, which philosophy is most important? Which philosophy poses the greatest challenge for moral theology? And my conviction is that it's phenomenology, and particularly contemporary French phenomenology, which poses the most important challenges to moral theology today. The phenomenology is a big word, and I don't think it's actually possible, or maybe not prudent, to attempt a definition of phenomenology in a few words, especially in a few simple words. I think it's possible to give a general indication about what the word means. One of the important things to understand is that even the phenomenologists among themselves don't agree on what phenomenology is. There are different understandings of phenomenology within phenomenology. So that's already a complication. Some of the most common ways of defining phenomenology, the original way would be by Husserl, Edmund Husserl, who thought of phenomenology as a science. After him, other thinkers thought of phenomenology as a discipline, or some of them talk about a quasi-discipline. And more recent authors talk about, in more vague terms, they talk about phenomenology as a current of thought, or even as a kind of a style. If you ask me my personal opinion, I think the best way of understanding in general terms what phenomenology is, it's a current of thought based upon a method. And the method is called reduction. And reduction means focusing on the immediate experience of consciousness rather than moving into critical reflection immediately. Take time to attend to the immediate experience of consciousness, to attend to the phenomenon as it presents itself. I think phenomenology is particularly important to moral theology because of what moral theology is about. Moral theology is essentially a practical science reflecting on the practical experience of life, of living as beings, human beings capable of good and evil. That's what moral theology is, and it's because phenomenology examines very critically who we are, what it means to be human, and most of all, what it means to know, what it means to perceive. That's what phenomenology does. So if moral theology is about understanding who we are, especially in moral terms, and if phenomenology is inviting us to think critically about who we are, then I think there's a very direct contribution possible from phenomenology towards moral theology. We just take the example of conscience, which is one of the key terms in moral theology. Phenomenology would invite us to think critically about the way we think about conscience. We tend to think about conscience as a voice or as a place within us. These are the terms that are used in the classical documents. Phenomenology would say, well, what do you mean by a place, or what do you mean by a voice? So it would suggest, phenomenology would suggest to us that we have an inadequate understanding of ourselves, and that with the help of phenomenology we can understand ourselves better and therefore do moral theology better.